Hi, I'm Ian, and welcome to Ghosts and Bears, the podcast where we tell you the actual ghost story with the actual history in the actual place. This episode, we're heading down to Lower Humboldt Street in Victoria, BC, where there's a ghost who is still looking for revenge. Join us as we meet Joe Nuana and hear about the dastardly deed that got him where he is today. Coming up on Ghosts and Bears. Welcome to this episode. We are glad you're here. Episode 12, The Murdering Ghost of Joe Nuana. And I just have been pretty invested in finding out more about what is going on with him and how he ended up to come here in the first place. It's a story we do tell on the Ghost Walks pretty regularly. It's one of our kind of standbys. It's a brilliant story. It's got everything. But I wasn't super clear on why the Hawaiians are here. The other thing I wanted to kind of look into was, during this sort of time in history when we're trying to make past wrongs right, was the term Kanaka a bad term? Was it a slang or whatever? And from what I could learn, Canadian Kanakas were all Hawaiian in origin, which was, as the name had suggested. And they were workers from various Pacific islands employed in the British colonies, such as British Columbia and Fiji, Queensland, Australia. They also worked in California and Chile. I had no idea. They were aboard the first exploration and trading ships to reach the Pacific Northwest coast. And some went, north from California. Others jumped ship. And Kanakas lived among various First Nations people as well. They joined fur trading. They took residence in Hudson's Bay forts and were used by the Hudson's Bay Company. And a great many were contractees of the Hudson's Bay Company. They used the term Kanaka for themselves, and it means human being. So it was never a slur. It was never a put down. It was just really a way of referring to themselves. So I was relieved about that. In fact, Kanaka says that the word Canuck, which is sort of a slang for a Canadian person or a nickname for Canadian, is derived from the Hawaiian Kanaka. So it's far more embedded in our history than I had any idea. Along the Fraser River, which is sort of the main river that runs up British Columbia, there were a lot of stopping points for the steamships. There wasn't a road. It was all navigated through steamship companies and through steamships, and they would stop at different places along the way called bars. So there's Boston Bar and Sailor's Bar, and you guessed it, Kanaka Bar. And that was where a group of Kanaka people had staked a claim and had been also working for the fur company, and that's where they got together and lived, was at Kanaka Bar. Again, lots of intermarrying with settlers and First Nations, and they really just sort of developed and adapted to wherever they were, which is amazing. And it was, as I said, never anything of a derivative or derisive or a put down or anything else. But I really wanted to make sure of that before I, started shooting my mouth off. It's pretty interesting how the Kanaka Row, which was kind of a, not a great neighborhood. It was, definitely for the working class in the fort during the time, is now the place where the Empress is, which is probably the most expensive hotel in Victoria. I love that. I love history for doing that to all of us all the time. You will find places like here in Victoria, we have a place called the Songhees, and originally that was the garbage dump for the area. And then they said, we want this land. We're going to make the First Nations people live there. So they bumped them over and called it the Songhees. And then a little further along, they were like, actually, we need that land for the railroad and for the rail yard. So we're going to bump you off of that too. And then that's, of course, what they did. So this was land that nobody wanted. Well, now it is the site of the most expensive condos in all of Victoria. So, history comes around. The nice thing is, I did that story about Agnes Bings on one of the early episodes of the podcast. And the cool part for me was there is a huge setup talking about Pilatus Rock, and there is some totems there, and definitely some things about the Lekwungen people who were there before. So there are certainly efforts, at least, trying to be made to have people understand that, the white North American people were not the original North American people. So that's a good thing. And they are definitely 100% trying to incorporate that. So that's good to see. Joe, not a good dude. You're going to hear all about this in the story time. It is one of those stories that we tend to have to rein in a bit depending on the audience. There's certainly some things you can leave out, and there's certainly things you can give more details about. It was quite a grisly story. It was quite an unhappy ending for old Joe, and not old, he was like 16, 17 years old. But it definitely has a whole nother angle than just what is, let's just say if there's little kids in the group, I definitely will lighten it up a bit. That's one thing you do when you're leading groups of people, is you sort of get a feel for them, what they're into, what they're going to enjoy. And if I have a group with little kids in it, yeah, Joe's story suddenly gets a whole lot tamer. So, but it reminds me, actually, one of the stories I did that I'm going to have on the podcast coming up. But there's this thing where I'm trying to talk about a woman who was a former sex worker. She was a prostitute who lived in a hotel. Her name was Charlotte. And the way I would describe it when kids were there is I would say, and Charlotte would entertain gentlemen for money in her room. And one time I said that, and this little 4-year-old was right beside me with his dad. And I'm still telling the story, but I'm listening to this kid. And the kid's like, "Dad, what did she do?" And the dad looked uncomfortable, and he goes, "She told jokes." And the kid, not willing to let that go, was like, "They must have been really good jokes." And here I am trying to spin this scary tale, and I'm trying also very hard not to laugh. So you never know what's going to happen. But we are going to jump into the story of Joe Nuana. It not only shook up Victoria, it shook up another community as well in the States. And ultimately, Joe had the misfortune, I suppose, of meeting justice in the American side and not the Canadian side. And all of this will be revealed as to why coming up in the terrible story of the murdering ghost of Joe Nuana. Here it comes. All right, so here we are. We are on Lower Humboldt Street, right beside the Empress. And where we were for that first story, where we were right in front of the Empress, that used to be part of the Inner Harbor. In fact, the Inner Harbor went all the way up to Douglas Street. So where we would have probably been about hip deep in mud. And in fact, the Empress is built in the mud. They put in a whole bunch of wooden pilings, and then they built the Empress on top of those pilings. So it drops about half an inch every year. Moral of that story is, if there's an earthquake, you don't want to be in that building, because it's just going to go right back into the mud. But along here, originally, the edge of the harbor up here, it wasn't the best place to be. This was what they called Kanaka Row. And you will hear the term Kanaka around British Columbia quite a bit. And it's the old-timey word for Hawaiian. Now, why would there be Hawaiians here in the 1850s? I'm so glad you asked me that. It's because of the Hudson's Bay Company. They were like the Walmart of their time. They were everywhere and always looking to expand. And so what they would do is they would take people from one established colony and they would move them to another colony to help get it started. And that was kind of their way of working. This group of people here, just hardworking people, wanted to make some money, have an experience, that kind of thing. Now, most families were here for those reasons, but every family has that one person, you know, who, when you invite everyone for Christmas or New Year's, and there's that one person you kind of hope doesn't show up. You know, if you don't know who it is, might be you. So this was no different. There was one family here. The person in question's name was Joe Nuana. Joe was not a happy favorite for being in Victoria. In fact, he'd already been asked to go and live somewhere else. And he was only 15 years old. And they're like, no, you're too bad. You need to go. And this is what happened. Joe got a job on one of the San Juan Islands just off the coast. He worked for a farmer as a farmhand. And that seemed to work out really well because he was no longer here, essentially. There was less trouble for him to get into. So Joe's uncle was very surprised when one morning he opened up the door and he found Joe standing there. Joe had 2 very nice sacks of household goods. And he said to his uncle, hey, I'm going back to the islands. Can I stay here for a few days till the boat goes? And his uncle was like, oh, I don't know. And Joe said, I got money. And he did. He had a great big wad of cash. Now, his uncle knew enough to just not ask. He did not want to know where Joe got it from because it probably wasn't anywhere good. So he made a deal with him. He said, listen, you can sleep here, but during the day, I don't want you here. Go hang out in the saloons, the brothels, whatever. I don't want you here. Is that cool? And Joe said, yeah, no problem. So for the first few days, it worked out just fine. But then one morning, 2 very large, angry-looking men who happened to be the law in Port Townsend, Washington, showed up, and they were looking for Joe, and they were very unhappy. When they told Joe's uncle exactly what Joe had done, his uncle was so horrified, he actually walked the law guys down to the saloon, pointed Joe out at the bar so that they could grab him, and they brought him back to the inner harbor, tied him to the mast of the ship, and then they sailed to Port Townsend, Washington, where they then put him on trial, found him guilty, and sentenced him to be hanged. Kind of a big deal. So what did Joe do? It was pretty bad. There was a woman here in Victoria. Her name was Serena. Serena was said to be the prettiest woman in all of Victoria. I mean, that sounds great, but there were like 10 women here, so, you know, her odds are pretty good. But she was also very sweet. Serena and her father ran what was known as a breakfast tavern together. And because she was so kind, if you came in and you were hungry, but you didn't have enough money, you wouldn't leave hungry. Serena would find a way to ensure that you got something to eat. So she was very sweet. Because of her beauty and because she was so sweet, she was being proposed to all the time, probably every month or every other month. And she would always very graciously decline, thank you so much, I simply couldn't, my father needs me. That was until a man named Harry Dwyer walked through those doors. Harry had a farm on the San Juan Island. He was young, he was up and coming, and he knew nothing about Serena, nothing. But all he knew was he was hungry for breakfast. So he came into the restaurant, he sat down, she came over to take his order, and as their eyes met, that was it. They were gone for each other. Within 3 months, they were engaged to be married. Now, this was a big deal around here. Victoria did not have a whole lot in the way of homegrown romance. And so people were really excited. So when they got married, the people of Victoria gave them tons of beautiful gifts and cash, quite a large amount of cash. Now, there was a problem because the newspaper at the time had no way of printing pictures. The technology wasn't there. So what they would do to make up for it is they would print every story in excruciating detail. So when Selena and Harry got married, what did they do? They put in every single gift and they put in every single dollar right down to the penny. And Joe read the paper. And Joe deduced, not incorrectly, morally wrong, but not incorrectly, that if he got rid of Harry and Selena, he could have their nice stuff and their money. So he waited. He waited actually quite a few months. He waited until all the hubbub had died down, and then he went to the farmer he worked for, and he said, hey, I'm going duck hunting. Can I borrow your gun? And the farmer said, sure, here's some shells. What he really did was he went and he stood around Harry Dwyer's field in the bushes, waiting for Harry to come to the field. And when he did, And when his back was turned, Joe stepped out of the shrubs and he shot Harry in the back. Harry didn't die right away, so Joe went over, got the butt of the gun, and finished Harry off. Now, Selena saw that part. She heard the gun and she'd come out to see what was happening, but she watched Joe kill her husband with the gun, the butt of the gun, but she couldn't run away. She was 8 months pregnant by this point. So she locked herself in the house, and she just sort of hoped for the best. She barricaded the door. But when Joe couldn't get in through the door, he just went through a window, and before Selena could even get out a word, he just shot her where she stood. He then grabbed some sacks and began taking anything of value. He found where they hid their money. He took that. He found the deed to the farm, although what he was going to do with it, I have no idea. And he threw that in his sack as well. Then he noticed on Serena's finger, she had a band of gold. He couldn't get it off. Her finger was swollen. So he got the kitchen hatchet and he got the ring. And you know the rest. He then showed up at his uncle's house looking to book a trip home. Well, when the city of Victoria heard about this, because of course the newspaper, extreme details, right? They were incensed. Who could do this to their Serena? They were so upset. So much so that a group of them actually chartered a ship on the day of Joe's hanging because they wanted to go over and see the monster that had committed this crime. Well, that's what they did. They sailed over there, but they were a bit surprised when the courthouse door opened. And rather than this big, brutish, hulking monster came out who was striding manfully to the scaffold, it wasn't that at all. It was this skinny, weeping 16-year-old boy. And as he walked through the crowd, he was looking at everybody in the eye, saying, "Please, I'm sorry. I know it was wrong. Please, I don't want to die. Please, I won't do it again. Please, don't let them do this to me." It was too late. But for a lot of the people in the crowd, this was not what they thought they were coming to see, and they just walked away. They took him up to the scaffold, they put the rope around his neck, and they said, "Do you have any last words?" And Joe looked at the executioner and he said, "Please, sir, make it quick." It wasn't quick. You see, in Victoria, because we were part of the British government, we actually had a book on how to properly hang a man. Of course we did. It's a lot of math, right? Rope, drop, weight, falling through the trap door, all those things. And you want to do it right. Because if you have a good hanging, and I say that depending on what side of the rope you're on, but if you want to have a good hanging, you fall through the trap door, your neck breaks, it's all over in 3 to 4 minutes. That's a good hanging. That's a good public execution, if there is such a thing. Unfortunately, this poor man in Port Townsend had no such book. He didn't know what was going on. It turned out this was Port Townsend's very first and very last public execution. He had put up a rig for a 6-foot, 200-pound man, not a 5'7", 115-pound boy. So when he fell through the trap door, he just kind of hung there, choking, gasping, coughing, trying to catch his breath. It didn't break his neck. People started jeering at the executioner because he'd done such a bad job. He got so desperate, he ran under the scaffold and began pulling on Joe's legs, trying to break his neck. It was awful. More people walked away. They did not sign up for this. Finally, after over 90 minutes, Joe finally stopped breathing. They cut him down and they buried him. They didn't even check to make sure he was gone. They just wanted it over with. Now, Joe had become what the Hawaiians call an ohane. And this means a vengeful spirit. Ghosts don't always, haunt where they died. A lot of times they'll come back to a place that has meaning for them. Sometimes for a good reason, love, protection, family, but sometimes for not so good reasons. Hate, anger, or in this case, revenge. Because as far as Joe was concerned, it was his uncle's fault that he was getting hanged. Not his own actions. That's crazy. He felt like his uncle had betrayed him. And so he came back to Lower Humboldt Street to his uncle's cottage because he was going to have his revenge in ghost form. Well, his uncle was way ahead of him. He knew Joe blamed him, and he'd already gotten out of town. But Joe came back, and there was no one here to get. The Hawaiians believe you can't get rid of an ohane until it has its revenge. So that's a problem for the rest of us. That side of the street is where they have more tourists than locals. The locals mostly stick to this side because that side has an incredibly high count of trip and falls. People stumbling into traffic, people looking at their feet to see what they fell over. Sometimes people even claim to have felt hands on their back. It wasn't such a big deal when it was a horse and buggy. It got a little more serious when it was tour buses and cabs. I guess now there's a bike lane, so smoked by a BMX, I don't know. I mean, it's unpleasant anyway. People would sometimes even say they saw a skinny, dirty, barefooted kid duck around the corner. But when they get there, there'd be no one there. So you can't get rid of an ohane, but the Hawaiians do say you can get it to leave you alone. And what you need to do is make it laugh. And the way they recommend doing this, if an ohane confronts you in the street, you need to take off all your clothes and do a little dance. But no one wants to see that. So we're going to go up the hill and talk about some chocolate shop ghosts this way. And that is exactly what we did. As you know, we headed up the hill and we talked about the Rogers Chocolate Shop ghost, which you would know if you'd listened to the last episode. Haha, see how that works? I'm so clever. Now we are going to talk a little bit about a recently failed ghosts and bears excursion to get more stories. And with me to do that is Mr. Jason.
Hey, all.
Hey, Jason's here. Yay!
Yay.
So what I said we were going to talk about was our recently failed Ghosts and Bears excursion, which really just failed, like, literally yesterday.
Multiple times.
But also, why don't you talk about what the original plan was? Because we talked about it on the podcast.
That's right, yeah. The first original plan was we took some vacation days from our actual jobs, but we were heading to, in theory, Los Angeles, and I was prudent by booking the tickets roughly September 29th to October 5.
Yeah.
And, September 21st came around, and the travel restrictions were extended.
Yep.
And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to play that game. So I just canceled the tickets. And then...
Well, not only that, but the COVID numbers are going up too. That
yes.
Delta variant thing. And it was like, yeah, we're both double vaxxed, but
yeah,
I don't really want to take a chance of getting it. We both had it. We know what it's like.
Yeah. And, vaccination is not a solution to the problem. You can still get it, right? The testing... there was issues with regard to a potential $5,500.
Oh yeah, when we came
fine.
home, yeah. If we accidentally got given the wrong test, even
exactly.
though you know what you asked for, then yeah, you come home and you have a ticket for $5,500. There were so many factors, it just wasn't worth it.
Yeah, it's not worth it.
So our new plan, because the book is coming out October 5th.
Yes.
The new book, Vancouver's Most Haunted. So we thought, hey, what a great opportunity. We'll go to Vancouver. Mm-hmm. We'll talk to Lisa, who gave us a couple stories.
That's right.
We'll talk to Gina and Victoria from Haunted BC.
Yes.
Because they gave us some stories. And we got it all arranged. We were going to go to Riverside Hospital. We were going to go meet Lisa. And then what happened? What happened? We woke up in the morning. We're all set to go to the ferry. And
one of the vessels was broken down. So that's okay. We're fine with that. I think this is about 10 a.m. I was looking, and I saw that they were ticketing for the 5 p.m. And our first interview was at about 6. And that's just not going to happen.
No.
Because it's hour and a half crossing. We'd be so late if we took that particular vessel.
And we should, for people who don't know, so we live on Vancouver Island.
That's right.
Vancouver Island, so Victoria to outside of Vancouver is about an hour and a half to take the ferry. But you also have to get to the ferry. You have to line up. You have to wait. Then you go on board the vessel. Then it gets there. Then you unload. And it's another, 30 minutes to get into Vancouver?
Depends. It's about 30 minutes to an hour usually. Yeah.
So, but I just want to make it clear that we're not talking about going over a highway here. We're talking about quite a journey just to get to Vancouver. So it's about four hours.
Yeah, it can be 3 to 4 hours, absolutely.
Yeah. So that was our plan. We were going to go jump on the ferry and head off to Vancouver. And then we went, nope, we're not going to be going from our normal place. What are we going to do?
No, so we drove up island to Nanaimo. And as we were pulling into the terminal at about, it was about 12:45.
Literally pulling into the terminal.
Yeah, we got turned away because it sounds like there was a situation at Departure Bay and the only people that were going to make the next ferry, which was 3:30 or so, are the reservations. So we
their
didn't
terminal
have
was
one.
broken. Something went wrong with
Yeah,
the
I'm
terminal.
not
They're like,
entirely
no,
sure.
sorry, you can't go. Try Duke Point, which is about, what, half an hour up the road?
Yeah, so Duke Point only had 16%
Yeah.
or so. And I said, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm done. I can't do this.
And honestly, by the time we turned around and got to the main road, it was full. Like,
yeah, and that's okay.
we just kind of went, this isn't going to happen. Something doesn't want us to go off the island right now.
Yeah, well, Ian was a little bit sad. Here he had to text everyone saying we have to cancel the plans, and
Yeah.
I had to contact the Sutton place in Vancouver because we had
Cancel the
reservations.
hotel.
Yeah, so
It was just a mess.
everyone was cool with it. I said to Ian, this is the universe's way of saying we shouldn't travel to Vancouver.
Yep, 100%.
And
So
I
then,
suggested, if we do, what's the problems with returning home? Because we had to come back today.
That's the thing.
So just a day over, just overnight,
Yeah.
and come back today. So I didn't want to risk that because essentially we're going to be heading over to Vancouver potentially tomorrow again, but
Or somewhere.
we're leaving.
Yeah, we don't know exactly where we're going to go yet. We just know we've got this time off and we want to go somewhere, but we'll see where we end up. I don't know. Right now, I'm very nervous about the ferry situation. The other thing is, it's not just if the ferries are broken down, it's also the weather. Like,
Yes,
I've
yeah.
had friends get stuck here for like 2 days because the winds have been high for 2 days and the ferries can't go. So you're
That's
just
right.
stuck.
So it's not that the ferries can't pass when the winds are high, and it's because they have difficulty docking in Tsawwassen, which is Vancouver's side,
Yeah.
because it's completely exposed.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they don't want what are called hard landings. So that wrecks the dock. It
I
can
was
wreck the
gonna say,
ferry.
that's a euphemism for crashing into the land, essentially.
Yeah, so they, it's a responsible thing, and that's fine. It's part of living on the island.
I was going to say
that we do.
it's part of the reality of living on the island.
That's right. So
So we adapted and changed and
That's right.
and grew as human beings. So we we went and did exciting grown up things like get our cell phones plans changed, and then I discovered something I have never experienced before. Do you remember? Remember we went to that place and got the boba drinks?
Oh yes, yeah. The Big Orange is what it's called.
That was amazing.
Yeah, they had these little
Popping lychee boba
yeah.
in the chocolate tea. So it was basically like
Chocolate
the
milk
best
tea.
chocolate milk you've ever had with these tiny lychee fruit popping bobas in them.
Popping boba.
It made me instantly happy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. It helped.
It helped a lot. And then we went to Comox, which is actually a favorite place of Jason because he used to
Yeah.
spend his summers there. What did you do there?
Oh, I used to be in Sea Cadets, and many years in the summers I would go up there and spend 6 weeks or so up there doing Navy cadet stuff.
Playing the trumpet.
Yeah, playing the trumpet essentially. Yeah, it was HMCS Quadra Senior Band, so I'm an alumnus of that,
Yeah.
which is cool.
Yeah.
We were just up there about a month and a half ago.
For a reunion.
Yeah, for a
it's
big
lot of fun.
reunion. It was at the tail end of our vacation, so that was a nice way to wrap up our summer vacation.
Connor, if you're listening, that was an awesome time. We want
Yes.
to hang out again.
Yeah, 100%. Connor is an old acquaintance of mine that I used to hang out with way back when in
Yeah.
the 90s.
And now we're all friends. Yay!
causing all sorts of heck.
So we went to Comox, and one of the things that Jay had said that he was sad about was he loves going to this place on, now this is going to sound very bougie, but he loves going to this place on Rodeo Drive.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Oh, there's a place I really enjoy. I took a drive, a few years ago, about 20,000 miles actually. I just went to rediscover myself.
Just a little drive.
Yeah, 20,000 miles. And I came around this place in Rodeo, and it's called La Patisserie, Nahid La Patisserie, and it's they specialize in French desserts. And I took a liking to the lady who owns it and chatted very briefly with her, but she's busy, so that's fine. But I was always shocked that there's this newspaper article, I think it was from 2006, And it was her and cake that was $20 million in 2006.
20 million.
20 million. Only on Rodeo.
I was going, what the? How do you have a $20 million cake? And then I read the article and I went,
Has diamonds.
It has diamonds.
Real diamonds.
You remember, I don't know if you ever did this when you were a kid. My aunt used to do this in the Christmas pudding or birthday cakes.
Yes.
She would wrap up money in tin foil or wax paper, and she'd shove it in the cake. Mm-hmm. And then when you got your piece of cake, you got like a quarter or a dime or a loonie, right? Well, same principle.
Yeah, except you get carats of diamonds. So it was pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I had some dessert and an espresso, and I just sat on the balcony and watched people.
And just really absorbed life.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Which is awesome.
And I took Ian there a year later, and surprisingly, Naheed did remember me.
Okay.
Actually, there's a few people that remembered me on my trip and journey.
I know, because here's the deal that everyone should know about Jason. If we go somewhere like a roadside diner or a gas station and I go to the bathroom, I know that when I come back from the bathroom, Jason will have made a new best friend. That is just the way Jason is. So when he walked in, this lady was like, "Oh, I remember you." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "Of course you do. Everyone remembers Jason."
Yes. Yeah. Actually, we got Ian an American cell phone too from, it was Santa Rosa Plaza, as I recall. It was the AT&T there. And the lady remembered me from the year before.
Which is crazy.
I couldn't believe it. She knew I had issues with another cell phone provider. Yeah. And Amex, bless their hearts, gave me my money back.
Yeah.
Because the other cell phone provider said once you pay for your prepaid plan, that's it. You're done. You lose the money. And this service it didn't work.
Yeah.
Literally, I got the service in Sequim, Washington. And 48 hours later, after hours and hours of phone calls with this provider, and it actually broke. Yeah, I was near Ukiah, 45 minutes north of Ukiah, and I woke up, got into my car, ready to drive, and literally my phone didn't work. Yeah, nothing, because the gentleman was like, "Oh, okay, that's okay. Go to sleep. I'll do a hard reset on your phone.
And in the morning, it'll be fine. He lied.
Yeah, no, it didn't work at all. Completely gone.
Anyway, wherever Jason goes, he makes friends. But one of the things I said to him was, because he was sad about not being able to go to this restaurant, and I said to him, "Listen, and we have a favorite place in Santa Monica. We went for sushi, which was pretty transformative." Yes. And the funny story around that is, we're sitting in Santa Monica having this amazing once in a lifetime sushi. And they had a TV on. Yeah. And we both thought, "Oh, the Golden Globes, that's interesting." Never connecting that with where we were. And then we go for a drive. We went for a drive and we're like, "Let's go down into Beverly Hills."
That's right.
So we go driving down there and I'm like, "Oh my God, did something happen? Like all the streets are closed off.
Wilshire,
there's police
Sunset.
Everywhere. All these limos, all these SUVs. Like, what's going on?" And then I see these women coming out of this building wearing probably the most expensive dresses I've ever seen.
Yes.
And that's when I was like,
that's
my
right.
God, the Golden Globes.
Well, because when we were driving around earlier that afternoon, parts of Wiltshire, parts of Sunset were being shut down.
But
and we were like,
what's going on? We didn't connect it at all.
No,
because we're from Canada and nothing ever exciting happens in Canada.
Not like that.
No, not like that.
Actually, and who pulled up beside us in a Rolls Royce?
RuPaul.
Yeah.
He looked like a wizened old woman.
Oh, my gosh. And Ian's like, "Oh, my God, that's so-and-so." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it is."
Yeah.
He was in a Phantom Drophead. Very nice
Rolls
car.
Royce. Very nice. Anyway, so what I said to Jay when we couldn't go to LA, I said, "Listen, we will find a restaurant like the one we went to in Santa Monica, and we will find a bakery like the one you enjoyed on Rodeo Drive."
Yes.
And when we couldn't even go to Vancouver, we're like, "Oh, well, that's not going to happen." So then we decide we're in Comox. It's nighttime. It's about going to have a bit of a storm's coming. So we thought, you know what? We're going to go and do something. We're going to find a restaurant, something. And Jay loves Italian food, so that's what we decided to do. So we went and found this place. It was called Toscanos, right in Comox. And we went there, and there were lots of people there. And we're like, "Oh, well, this looks good." And it was a rainy, stormy night. And this place was, the kind of place with candles on the table. And it was just really, really lovely. So Jay orders, we both ordered the Caesar salad to start, which was amazing.
Excellent.
It was so good.
It was excellent.
And then Jay got a spaghetti bolognese, and I had shrimp carbonara.
Carbonara, yes.
And I have to say,
Wow.
yeah.
I'm impressed.
It was homemade pasta, and then the sauces were completely from scratch. And that was probably the finest carbonara I've ever had in my whole life.
I agree.
Yeah.
100%.
And then we were like, we should get dessert because we're pigs and we're here. So we ordered the deconstructed lemon tart and the chocolate mousse. I know.
Wow.
And we're kind of like, this will be lame. It'll be like one. No.
It was shocking.
Yeah.
It was like La Patisserie.
It was. And that's what I said to him as we're eating dessert slowly and completely thoroughly and trying to restrain ourselves from licking the plate, was, oh my God, we did it.
And the mousse. The mousse was amazing.
The chocolate mousse. And I said, we did it. We found the equivalent of La Patisserie and of Robata Bar in Santa Monica. So we're so happy.
It was really good. It was a great way to end the day.
It was. And I honestly think the moral of that story is you find your joy where you can.
Exactly. And we got a loft. The hotel provided us with a loft. It was nice, but there was some bizarre
weird
banging
things going on.
The most bizarre banging about 12 midnight.
We knew we were the only people on the upper loft area.
Correct.
There wasn't anybody else up there. And it was actually around 11 the first time it happened. And we climbed into bed. Jay, turned out his light. I'm just reading my e-reader, and then boom, 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 boom. Like it made the bed shake.
It shook the bed.
It shook the wall. It shook the bed.
I wasn't very impressed. I was mad.
And
because I was just falling asleep.
And I'm looking over at Jay, and then he goes, and then it stopped. And
it stopped.
And Jay goes, what was that? And I said,
you had quite a look.
No idea.
I had no idea what it was.
And then about 5 minutes later,
it started
up again.
Yeah.
And this time,
but it went a while.
A long time. And I went downstairs and I opened the door of our room. Nobody was out there.
There was no one out there.
There was no movement. And the pounding, the banging wasn't followed by like walking.
Nothing. There was
nothing.
Human noises with it. It was just banging.
So it happened again.
And I felt the wall. It was shaking the wall.
And
that was at the bed.
Yeah. And then I came upstairs, back up to the loft, and I got into bed, and Jason's like, what is going on? I said, I don't know.
I had a few more colorful things to say than that. I wasn't very impressed.
Which we won't put on the podcast.
I was well,
yeah.
It was starting to get me mad to the point where we were ready to fall down.
It happened a third time.
Yes, but this time it just kept going.
And I went up to the wall, and I pounded one wall.
Pounded.
And Jay pounded the other wall.
I pounded two walls.
Yeah.
Because you didn't. I was pounding the one other corner.
Yeah.
And then I started pounding on the wall.
Behind us.
Because I felt the wall, and I could feel my hand shaking because the pillow was shaking.
Yeah. No, it was super loud.
I started banging that wall like crazy. Like, well, a few times, but really thud, and then it stopped. And it didn't happen again. And in the morning... And we were in the loft. There was nothing there.
I know.
The loft part of this hotel has nothing there.
Yeah. So in the morning, I did tell Jason that many, 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 many years ago, like 15 years ago, I stayed in that same hotel in a different room.
Wow.
But it was 100% a haunted room, and I had one of the worst nights of my whole life. So
yeah, he was saying that. I'm like, but I did get some uneasiness. I had trouble falling asleep.
Yeah.
Normally, Ian will tell you I can be gone in 3 breaths.
3 breaths, and he's one of those people. I am not.
I was, but until that banging started, and then I had trouble falling asleep.
Well,
that
it was
night.
unnerving.
Well, last night I wasn't very impressed.
So we did leave the bathroom light on.
We did. Well, but to put it into context, the room was pitch black because the storm was insane. And it wasn't the storm. Because the storm was wrapping the windows of this loft suite.
Yeah.
And they're huge. These windows are massive. But we could, but to put it into context, this is downstairs at the other end of this room is where you'd hear the windows.
Yeah.
But we're upstairs at the very other end of this building, and that's where we felt the banging.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
And it had nothing to do with the storm.
No.
It wasn't with the storm's constant gusting. This was like boom, 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 boom. Oh, I was mad.
Yeah.
I was
So
mad.
that's the only downside. And then other than that, we had a great time. Went to Goats on the Roof on the way home. And
Yeah, it's a great little place.
It was great. So we had a really good time.
We even saw a little Billy Goat's gruff on the top. He had a full beard.
So we headed out to find more stories for the podcast, and we got nothing.
Although, no, we got that insane experience in the loft.
True. That's true. Oh, you're right. So maybe we did
that
get
was
it all.
weird. That was very weird. Well, no, because I basically was saying maybe the universe is telling us to stay home.
Yeah, no, it's true.
Because that storm, wow, it had 100-kilometer gusts.
Yeah, it was bad.
And Comox.
What is that in American?
62.5 miles an hour.
There you go.
62.5
for our American listeners. And I don't like to leave them out.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so we're going to finish off with our usual things, but I just wanted Jason here because he needed to share the experience as well, because it was a weird one. Life did not work out as planned, but it turned out it was awesome anyway. So
no, well, it's ironic
thrilled.
because I prefer traveling with no plans.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
If you ask Ian, I don't.
Oh, and usually I don't mind, but the fact that we were meeting other people meant we had to have plans.
10 a.m. and 1,800 hours, 1,000 hours the next day. Yeah, I was. We had reservations at a really nice restaurant.
And none of it happened.
None of it happened.
All right. We are going to be right back, and I will finish it all off with our usual goodbyes. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
So I don't know if you noticed, but Jason had his own mic this time. I know, we're fancy that way. He had it from a long time ago for recording trumpet, and we trotted it out to see if it would work, and it did. So we're pretty excited about that. Other than that, we don't have a whole lot to finish off with, to be honest with you. I do want to talk a little bit about our Buy Me a Coffee buyers, because I want to thank all of them. David, Carolyn, Greg, Haunted History, Spandex Guy, Catherine, Penn, Jules, Charlie, Sasquatch Mafia, Michelle, Jordan, Sandy, Kyle, Rebecca, Leslie, Melinda, Brianna, Mari, Steve, Christy, Tori, Sarah, Danny, Tammy, Arwin, Rick and Sue, Carla, Betsy, Michelle, Lauren, Pabakopu, Dixie, Koga, Evan, Aaron, and Ginger Manatee. Thank you for everything you have done for us and helped us out with. I am just so incredibly grateful. You have no idea. We have been putting pictures on for those of you who are $5 and up Buy Me a Coffee a month listeners. We've got those extra pictures there. We will have more for this episode as well, so you can see everywhere we're talking about. And also, thank you for the support. Just that is such a tangible way to say, hey, we like the show and we want to support you. So thank you so much. It does help pay these bills, and I'm eternally grateful. If you want to support us that way, just go to www.buymeacoffee.com/ghostsandbears.com. Ghosts and Bears. Or you can just go to our website, ghostsandbears.com, and click on support, and it'll take you right there and show you how to sign up. You can either do a one-time buy us a coffee, where you can literally buy us a coffee, or you can become one of our member supporters, and both are equally thrilled and grateful for. We have another episode coming up next time. It's going to be our Halloween episode, because it's going to drop on October 20th, which is as close to Halloween as we're going to get, because I think the one after that is November 3rd. And we're going to do another The Ghost in My House episode. And because it is Halloween, Jason and I thought we would do our house. So that episode is going to be Jason and I recording together. And because we had our... So we have these, I call them the modern seances. They're Zoom meetings. It's just like, can you hear us? Are you there? So that's why I call them modern seances. We have these. And one of our people who was on the call, Julie, was on the call with us. And she said, have you guys recorded that already? And I said, no, we haven't. And she said, why don't you make it like a video call? Like you could video it and then... like a video podcast. And I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm scared. But I mentioned it to Alex, our videographer, and he's like, oh, that'd be so great. So he's right into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up our dining room and bring down the laptop, plug in the mics, plug in all the equipment, and we are going to record that episode while Alex videotapes us, so that we can simultaneously release the videotape of it, or videotape, listen to me, I'm so old. We can release the video of it, and we can also drop the episode at the normal time for those of you who would rather spare your eyes and not see us in the flesh. Like kind of as a special Halloween thing. So that's the plan. Also, it's special because we're going to be talking about our house in the month of October. So I think it's actually going to be kind of cool, and I'm excited to see what Alex is going to do with it, because I'm sure he's going to come up with some cool way of editing it. We're pretty excited about that. That'll be a fun thing to do. And we've alluded to our house being haunted before, and so we're going to talk about it in full. So that will be a lot of fun. Other than that, all I can tell you about is our wonderful Redbubble store. And just go on there if you're looking for some Ghosts and Bears merch. I am loving mine because it is super comfortable, and it's just really easy to wear. And it's not too weird. It's not too out there. But it's a great way to show you support the show and maybe get someone to ask you about it. I'm wearing a shirt right now that says Ghosts and Bears, the podcast. And I wore that while we were running around Comox. And it actually surprisingly does spark up some conversations. So who knew? Well, Jason probably knew, but he would have talked to them anyway. I want to thank you so much for joining us. And I hope as we ease on into October and the spookiest month of the year, you're going to have a great and safe time. I know I've been crazy busy arranging for interviews and radio spots and podcast spots for the new book, which is coming out, Vancouver's Most Haunted. Apparently someone already has it. I'm recording this on the 30th of September, and someone pre-ordered it on Amazon, and she has it in her hands now. So apparently release dates mean nothing to Amazon. So if you would like a copy of Vancouver's Most Haunted, feel free to jump onto Amazon and order one, because apparently they'll just send it to anyone. And if you do have the book, if you have my other one too, Victoria's Most Haunted, or you do order Vancouver's Most Haunted and you enjoy it, please consider writing up a little review for Amazon. It helps so much. I had no idea. I never asked for reviews for Victoria's Most Haunted, and I probably should have. But I would love it if you could do it now. That would be so great. Just jump on Amazon, do a little review, give it 5 stars, because you want to. I hope. And same with Vancouver. Please do that, because it helps move you up in their rating system, and that's a good thing, which of course you can do on iTunes, the podcast. Please write us a positive review on there. 5 stars if you can. If you can't, send the review directly to me. And that would be awesome, because again, it helps. You won't believe how much it helps. So when you write a review, that is as good as supporting us in any real hands-on, cash in the pocket kind of way. So please do that if you're so moved. Other than that, look forward to our Halloween episode coming out, The Ghost in My House in View Royal, which is our home. And I think it's going to be really neat. So like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing what Alex puts together for that. We are hoping also to have an event, possibly in December, at a vineyard in Oliver. Kat, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to release any more details in case Kat changes her mind, but we're kind of excited to get asked. It would be our first kind of on the road, actually going to that place to be with you to talk about ghost stories. So that would be really neat if we get to do that. And maybe we could even record a podcast there, which would be really cool. So anyway, stuff on the horizon. We're excited. Of course, I have ghost walks like for days throughout October. It's going to be incredibly busy, but we are working hard on pulling stuff together for you. So I hope you enjoy it. Other than that, thanks again for joining us. I hope you have a fantastic week or day, or, work shift, or drive home, or drive to work, or finally getting rid of the kids for the day, whatever you're doing. And next time you're wandering around thinking about history or thinking about ghosts, remember, we've got the actual ghost stories with the actual history in the actual place. And hopefully, one day soon, that place will be with you. Take care. Bye.